Good morning and welcome. The one I'm going to talk to right now is Kim Carlson, because Kim, I'm taking my mask off, but I think I'm more than 20 feet away from you, and I hope that I'm not going to hit you with any muzzle blast this morning. It might be easier for people on the streaming side to hear me, and so I'm going to go like that. Thank you all for coming this morning. A few introductory remarks. You know, it has been a tough year. It really has. And I look at a number of institutions around the country, and they've sort of written this year off. It's the lost year. It really offends me that we would just mail in a year, because we've got students who, you know, it's a short period of time they're with us. And so I got to tell you that I think it's really been a great year for all that we've been challenged to do and things that have happened. I think there's great positive momentum on campus. And I want to talk to you just a little bit. We're going to go into budget this morning, then I'm going to go into overstaffing. For those of you who came today expecting to see pools of blood and lists of people who are going to be asked to leave this afternoon, that's not going to happen. Okay, I'm sorry if that's what you came for. You're going to be disappointed. But masks and social distancing and your cooperation saved us. We operated as open this year. You know, when we started last fall, there was great discussion, even within the university system, about should we be open, should we go all remote, what should we do? And the decision was made system-wide to be as normal as possible, but each of the campuses had a different definition of what normal would be. I got to tell you, I've talked to scores of students, and almost without exception, they have all appreciated the fact that they had the opportunity to be in person, to interact with you. They like that. That's what they paid for. And you've done tremendous work with them. We had over 80% retention last year. That's a private school number. And if you consider all the things that happened, there's good reason to believe that there shouldn't have been 80%. The other part of that is that their grade point averages fell right in line with what they normally were. My guess is the faculty didn't lower their rigor. It meant those students had a normal collegiate experience, and they received the value that they were seeking. For so many students, this is the right thing to do, and honestly, as we begin to recruit students, the recruiters tell me that one of the positive things about UNK, you're open. And if it gets bad, I have the chance to do some remote learning. But that's if it gets bad. And I really can't stress this enough, how appreciative I am, but I think that the students are of what you did this last year. Yeah, we lost special occasions, we lost athletic events, we lost saying goodbye to some retirees and to friends that were going off to do other things, we lost Friday afternoon clubs, we lost normal things. But we survived. It's not the end of the world. They're not going away forever. And honestly, I do think that the corner is being turned. And so I hope that we can do that. Look, I'm tired of wearing a mask too. Hopefully, we would all be vaccinated soon, and hopefully the variant, which is coming, will not be as severe as the other waves have been. So the landscape has not been all bad. One of the things that happened because of the virus and our handling of the pandemic has been that we've provided more tools for remote learning. So I learned for the first time this year what PTZ is. You know, the old pan, tilt, and zoom cameras. We've installed a ton of those around campus. 114 classrooms were equipped this year with the upgraded teaching technologies at no small expense, but that was done. We were able to do a campus-wide upgrade that started actually in January of this year. So you're going to see that happen through, I think, John, it should be done by June. Give us July. But we're going to attack the wireless problems on campus. And so we're going to go from 2 gigabyte to 20 gigabyte of wireless. We're going to look for dead spots. We're going to try to make it easier for the guests to sign in to do that. That's an investment of almost $3 million, and that money comes from tech money that is out there for us to be able to invest into the campus wireless program. You know, this year Discovery Hall opened, and so what a great opportunity. Some of you live in that building, others may have walked by. If you haven't, you ought to go in and take a look at it. It's a tremendous academic building. It's 90,000 square feet of a new way to teach. It opens up a lot of educational opportunities for us. President Carter uses it. I have listened to him on numerous occasions. The example he uses for new facilities, Discovery Hall on UNK campus. And his quote is that it is the model for future academic buildings. He has stressed that to all of his planning people. Go out and look at that building. That's what I think all teaching facilities should look like. It sets us apart. It helps us recruit students. It helps us with donors. I see Tim Jarris back there. Tim, we've taken a number of donors through there. They're in love with it. They love it. But we've also had some curriculum changes, which are good. We've also had some initiatives. If I would say one thing that's the top of my list is, what about recruitment and enrollment? And recruitment and enrollment, I think, have done a tremendous job. So here on the screen, I don't expect you to be able to read all those, but there's a number of new opportunities that are pretty aggressive for us that paid off this fall, but it will probably pay off even more in the next 2 years. So we've got a new admissions director, great hire. We've gotten additional resources to recruit students. That's starting to help. These initiatives, I think, are very strategic, and a number of them involve all of us. For example, the New Nebraskan Scholarship and so on. That has given us the opportunity to offer resident tuition to non-residents. So our numbers are really up. The number of admitted students outside of the state of Nebraska are dramatically up. So why am I talking about that in a budget forum? Well, here's how it works. That is either a great opportunity to attract more students, or that is a real financial risk, because we're lowering the tuition for the students who are already here who are non-residents. From the early numbers, the number of admits are up significantly. It's going to pay off. And so that gives me, some hope and some attitude. I think the other part of that is there's a number of other scholarship opportunities that are out there. We've been able to do a number of things. And so Junior Day, I think you're going to see more department and faculty interaction with visits. I don't know if Jody's here or not this morning. Hey, hi, Jody. I should have used you by name instead of saying a new admissions director, but it's a great hire. Thanks. If you don't know Jody, go get to know her, because she'll work with you. She really will to do this. There's still some uncertainties. And so, yes, Nebraska Promise is good. Nebraska Promise, remembers, for those families 60,000 and under family income. More and more students fall into that category and are coming to us because of that scholarship. In the short term, the pandemic has really caused us great budget problems. We were lucky. We had sufficient cash reserves that we have been spending down to do the things we need to do. But that points out the need to have cash. If we didn't have that, we would not be where we're at today to do that. Tuition revenues, if they will hold, and I think they will, we should have some flexibility now in part of our budget through planning of the permanent cuts. So that's why I'm here this morning to talk about the impact of that success and enrollment. We did get a tuition increase this fall. So the tuition increase of last fall gave us some more money that we didn't anticipate. That's good. Now, the horizon's still got some challenges out there. Last June, the Board of Regents set the budget for the next 2 years. And actually, they had set it the year before for a 3-year period, and we knew what our reduction numbers was. It's about $2.8 million we had to cut in 3 years. We have looked at that. I think that the Board of Regents has an investment in more of these new Nebraskan scholarships. They see those, a number of these other programs. But they did come up with a 3-year budget for us. As of June of last year, we made some cuts to address that first year reduction. We probably eliminated, I think, close to 15 positions. Most of you did not see that in a very public way. In other words, we didn't publish names and say, here's the hit list, but it was done painfully, obviously, for those people. But I think it was a good start for us. That was roughly about almost $900,000 worth of cuts we made between positions and some operating changes that we made. We still have a ways to go. So if you're doing the math, if roughly, I think it was probably closer to 800, we did some others the year before, but let's just for round numbers say we've got $2 million left that between now and July of 23, we need to get down to. And so we would have normally in the fall had a big budget hearing and made a pretty major reduction saying we got to get this done. We chose not to do that. Well, why would we do that? One, we knew tuition revenues were changing. We weren't sure what the final numbers were going to be because it also depended on how many students would have come back and retained in the spring. We also didn't know the impact of what the federal monies might do for us. We also didn't know how much money we may have to spend to deal with the pandemic. So I guess what I'm here today to tell you about is there's still a need to cut roughly $2 million, but I don't think it's prudent to do it today. Had we done it last fall, we would have cut too much too quick. We chose not to do that. By waiting, I think we've benefited all of us. Roughly we've got 780 people here who are full-time employees. I'll show you a slide in a little bit about that. But we're a people-generated operation. And so as we go forward, these are numbers. I don't expect you to know these numbers. I just want to show them for example. But roughly we get $45 million from the state of Nebraska. That doesn't come directly to us. That goes to the university as a whole. So central administration allocates that out to us. We rely a lot on that. As you'll also see, I think I'm going to highlight that $45 million for you. There's some good spots in that for us. We have spent years trying to explain to central administration and the Board of Regents that UNK is different. Because we are smaller, it costs us more money to open the door. We don't have the flexibility of extra monies laying around because of scale. And some years that has fallen on fairly deaf ears. Between President Bounds and now President Carter, they have seen and understand UNK much better, and they've actually plugged some more money into us. And so those are huge changes for us. If we didn't have that extra money coming in, roughly, John, I don't know, what would you say, $4 million extra? It's come in a couple of different packages to us, but that has saved our bacon. And particularly this year, we'd probably be cutting close to $5 million if we didn't have the bump that we got from President Carter. When you see him, you got to say thank you. I do every day I see him. Now, that's not always made our sister institutions very happy with us, but honestly, we've been carrying them for a number of years by being underfunded. And so I think this is a great equalizer to do that. The other highlight of this is tuition. So you'll see here gross tuition. We had not planned on this much tuition. This was our budgeted amount of 37. It cost us a little more. We spent more money on remissions. Remissions is basically how we attract students. That's scholarship. We don't give them cash. What we do is forgive the revenue they're going to pay. And so, yes, we got more tuition money in last year than we anticipated because we had a pretty good enrollment. We weren't down dramatically. Our neighbors, Central Community College, they were down over 10%. 500 students they were down last year. That's profound. That did not happen to us. With that, we've got a little more. We expected we'd have roughly a 4% decrease this year in tuition revenue. We're actually going to be up. So that's saved us some money, and that's money we can put into the regular budget. This slide, again, the major part of this slide is the blue part of the pie. We're roughly 77% of our budget here, this is our state aided budget, is people. So if you put in utilities and people, you're over 80% of the budget. If we're going to have any movement to be able to address shortfalls, they're going to have to come from people. And Dr. Bisek's got a great line. The only new money that you have is the money that you have. I assume the deans have heard that so often they can almost recite that in their sleep. But it's really true for us at this point. What are we going to do? So state appropriations were up. Tuition was up. Instead of having a decline in tuition, we actually have some positive tuition numbers. What does that mean to us today? Well, let's see if I can go here. Did I miss one, John? I'm sorry. Now, we've got some considerations with tuition. So distance tuition exceeded its budget. Great. We also reduced the rate on some of those online to be consistent across the university system. But we've got some things that they're uncertain about tuition. One is that we do not know what the impact is going to be of the new Nebraskan scholarships, how many people we bring in. If we bring in a larger number, we're going to make some money on that. If we don't meet those goals, we're going to lose some money on that. But we also know that there's going to be some major changes in the way we operate campus that are going to be mandated to us, and that is in the form of block tuition rates. So block tuition rates are a student pays for X number of hours, and if they take anything over that, they get to go for free. It's popular across the country. It's now coming to Nebraska. President Carter is very interested in that. If that number gets set at 15 hours, in my book, that's pretty good. So if they want to take 16, 17, 18, 20 hours above that 15, they can go for free. But if you set that number at 12 or 13, we're going to lose a lot of revenue. That's really important where that gets set. That is an uncertainty to us. That will be decided this summer or this fall because they're going to implement that in the fall of 22. So that's a big uncertainty. The other part of tuition is this. This is a very difficult slide. There's just three things I want to point out. This is the mix between general funds and cash funds. So in other words, what the state pays and what the student pays. Students on the bottom, cash fund, the state appropriations are on the top line. If you look at 2001, 2002, that mix was 73-27. The state pays, the citizens pay 73%, the students pay the rest. The trend, if you go down in there in the middle, you'll see that we got so close that the student was paying 45% of the freight here, and the state was paying less than 55%. That's the point where we began to talk to central administration about, we will be a private institution. We will be more private than public. Do you really want that? If Kearney's the school of access, if Kearney's the school that you're going to go and talk to people who are from rural Nebraska who have a disproportionate lower income, you're really denying students. From that point on, you start to see the numbers change, and you get down here to the 2021, we are back in the range of roughly 62% the citizens are paying, and the students are paying 38%. That is much more in line with our sister institutions, and that's because of the extra funds that we were able to secure to put in. That's really important for us to be able to talk about that from a budget perspective. I think our efforts have paid off to reduce that. This is just a graph that shows the general funds. If you see that where they almost came to cross, the general funds are now on an upward trend, and the amount of money we get from students is it's stabilized and actually gone down a little. I think that for recruitment purposes is super for us. So, what are we looking at right now today as we sit and watch the legislature? A 2% increase. We probably will not get all that too. There's a rake that comes off. We're not going to net 2, but we will probably be able to cover our salaries. That's good. There are years we've had to eat that. Tuition revenue. No tuition increase this year or next year. So we're projecting our tuition revenue is flat for this upcoming fall, and we project a 1% increase. This is gross tuition, that we're going to have more students. We're going to bank on that. You'll see salaries from the expenditure lines. The faculty is going to have a 2.5% over the biennium, and the staff will get there. It's just going to take them a little longer. So if you add the 2% faculty and the 2.5%, that's 4.5%. And if you add the 1.5% and the 3.5% together, it just takes an extra year because they got a 0 last year. That's 4.5%. Benefits are going to increase about 7% for us. Those are manageable numbers. Those are things we can do. Before we go into the higher education relief funding, we have cut a number of years. I've looked back on the years that I've been here, 75% of the time we have had a budget reduction, not of our own doing. These are budgets that we're assigned. We've got to address them. So we're used to doing this. This is a larger number, but you know, we had the largest one probably was in February of 18, we had a $3.4 million reduction on campus. And there are programs that we eliminated, now not academically, but for example, we eliminated 3 sports. Was that a large dollar amount? It was about a little over 400,000 in base budget. Painful, disruptive. The same would be true, only more so, when you go to eliminate academic programs. We're going to try to avoid that if we can. Let's see here. The higher education funds, so these are the federal funds that are out there. Congress has obviously given out a lot of money to the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund called HERFA. Our first allocation was we got just a little under $4 million, of which $2 million was mandated to go to students. We have done that. The other $2 million comes to the university. What did we do with that? That is only a portion of what we had to refund for housing refunds from a year ago when we had students move out because we went to remote learning. We're still trying to struggle with some of those losses, but we also lost fees. We refunded some fees because students weren't here. Those were direct costs to us. The second round of allocation, roughly the same amount of money goes to students. We're dispersing that now. I'm looking over here at Kelly. We haven't done all of that yet. We're all out on the second allocation. Great. Okay, so most of that's gone to students. A lot of that's based on what they had for cost and for need, which is easy around here. It doesn't take long to run through that money. The rest of the institutional support goes back to reimburse us for funds that we've expended. We're down about, what, $4 million of cash, I would think. We took that out of our reserves just to be able to exist for the last year. We need to be able to build that back up. It's not a case where we get a check for $4 million. It's a line of credit. So when we have an eligible expense, we have to submit it. They will not pay us unless it's approved. I'd love to get the check and say, we trust you, do what you want to with it. It's not going to happen. Before I go to buckets, I want to talk a little bit about the impact of the virus on campus. From a budgetary perspective, it has caused us hours and hours and nights and days of staff time trying to manage the budget. There's been great draws on monies that we did have, we didn't have, and trying to provide some stability to it has been very difficult. You might say, Doug, why in the world didn't you do the budget stuff last fall? Well, one, quite frankly, we just didn't have as many people on staff working, doing all the things we needed to do. We're short. And so we decided to wait, and I'm really glad that we did. The bottom line of this is that we've benefited a lot by waiting till this time of year to make reductions. I think it's prudent not to make an additional cut this year. So that's, if you walk out of here this morning with anything, the university's not going to make a cut this year to the budget. Is that risky? Yeah, we're going to gamble on two things. One is that the tuition revenue continues to grow, and if it doesn't, we'll be back. Two is that we think that there's enough funds here that'll allow us time to grow enrollment even more, so that it isn't just getting more tuition dollars, we need more students. I think Kelly and her staff has done a wonderful job. We've reached the bottom. I'm very optimistic that we're on the road up. But that is a gamble. One thing for sure is we've got to restore those cash reserves. If nothing else, we don't know if the virus is over. We don't know if another round and variant is going to come. We don't know when there's another Bruner Hall flood. Those are just things that happen. And thank gosh we had some cash that we were able to deal with this. And I don't want to make light of the Bruner Hall flood. I mean, I think that's the most disruptive thing I've seen since I've been here. It's the biggest devastating impact on the ability to teach that we've had. But we're getting through that because we've got some cash that we were able to save back. Our days on cash here, in other words, what would you save? They tell you that you probably should save somewhere between, I'm going to look at John Watts here, somewhere between 50 and 75 days of operating expenditures that you should save. That's the industry standard. we're probably down around 30. We're about half of what we ought to be. But we do that because we're trying to get along, we're trying to be as efficient as we can. We don't have that much money to save back every year, but we do. We use a little every year to put into those cash funds, but we've got to replenish them. So thank you for taking the surveys. What does the surveys do? Well, it helps to prove to the feds that you all spent time dealing with the virus and the pandemic. They will reimburse us and put money back into our cash reserve because of that. That is essential to us. You want to look at some of the other campuses now? UNO, they're low on cash too. One of the other campuses is really flush with cash. Good, I'm glad you got that because I didn't want to explain it any further. That's budget. So what's the bottom line? We're not going to make any budget reductions this spring. We still owe roughly $2 million. We think by the growth of enrollment, we think also that there's going to be some federal monies to help us do some recruitment. We think there's going to be some additional funds come in. And quite frankly, the help from President Carter is going to help us a lot. It will get us above water. That is good. And so, I mean, I can't thank the budget office, John, you and your staff enough for the work you've done. I see so many people here, even Charlie, your shop has got people who do nothing but try to figure out how to keep us afloat. They've done a great job. Buckets, I wanted to talk a little bit. This is Kim Carlson. She could stand up here and give this for you, the bucket issue. If I were you, I'd say, well, now wait a minute. I see the university spending money all over the place. What's going on? We have 3 buckets. The first one is what we call the state aided. That was that slide of tuition and what we get from the legislature. That is base budget, that's every year, that's what pays you and I. That has been at a structural imbalance. So when we do budget reductions, one of those or both of those numbers have changed and probably gone lower. Less tuition, less people here, the rates are frozen. We're giving more in remissions and scholarships. It will cost us more. A lot of those things vary, and to do that, we have to get a hold of our state aided budget every year because that's not an imaginary number. That is a real number. We only get X amount of dollars and we can't write a bad check. And there's no line of credit. Bucket number 2 is the self-supporting operations. So you see this year things like fraternity sorority operations. Those students are paying money every month. They're revenue generators. We're borrowing money at very low interest rates now to be able to do that. There's people in this room who've worked hours trying to figure out how to pay for that fraternity and sorority life. Quite frankly, that is a crisis. We stand to lose that group of students if we don't fix that housing. And I think the Board of Regents have seen that. They've granted us a great deal of latitude, and they've really, I think, been over backwards to put this on a fast track for us. That's great. But that is a self-supporting operation. If I look at restricted, you're going to see in the legislature this year there's a bill called LB 588. And what it does, it is a payment between the state. Right now the state gives us $11 million, the university. The university some years ago raised tuition 2%, and they put in $11 million. That's a $22 million payment every year that basically goes onto a mortgage. So we were able to build buildings and pay them back a little bit of a time, at a time. That's what did the addition under Bruner. That's what did Discovery Hall. Those are big projects that were specifically identified by the legislature, we will give you money if you do this. So it isn't like they gave us money for Discovery Hall and said, spend it wherever you want to. It goes in that restricted bucket as well. Now this, if you look real close, you're going to go, what in the world is UNL Athletics doing up there? This is a slide we borrowed from Varner Hall because they had a little better graphics than what we had to deal with. And so in our bucket of restricted bucket, you will see things like specific legislative requirements to build Discovery Hall, to fix Bruner, whatever we have that will come down to do that. Now, 588 gives us, I mean, there's some really great opportunities in here. This is a 30-year project that's going to give the university as a whole about $600 million to spend on, well, you name it. Accessibility, fixing windows, doors, roofs, facades. There may be some other opportunities in this. It'll come out in probably 3 different tranches of money, but some will be pretty immediate. We have our plans in there, and we'll see how that comes out. But if you're going to watch a bill this year in the legislature, watch for LB 588. I think that it's a tremendous amount of money for the university, and we will get our fair share out of that. Some of you came today because of overstaffing. And so I think the best graphic I have, Kim's probably the only one that can see this. This is my list of hit list. This is the list of people, departments, and things I think we should act on today. It's blank. Why is that? There have been a lot of uneven increases, decline in student enrollments across our various academic programs on campus. Student interest in various programs have evolved. Some have increased, some have decreased. That causes a migration of enrollments from one area to another. That's true. As they migrate, so does their credit hour production. Since we have been part of the university, we have not done a review of staffing, academic staffing. That's what we're talking about. And so even though we're here doing budget things, at the same time, it became very apparent that we needed to begin to look at staffing at the same time. The key is for us to how are we going to optimize our capacity and what we're doing. This particular ratio is one factor. It is not the factor. If you're saying, why? What are you doing this for? What are the causes? It's no one thing. I want to give you some data today that I hope you'll chew on and think about and give me some feedback about. First one I'd look at is faculty-student ratios. We are the lowest of our peer group. No one doubts that small student-faculty ratios aren't positive for students. The issue is how much does it cost to you to get there? How efficient are you in doing that? And every year we do some, and we address some overstaffing. So when Dean Teton will have a vacancy in his college, that isn't always up to him that he gets to automatically replace. There's going to be a discussion about is there someplace else on campus that needs to do that more. But that, he doesn't get to plan that. It's as it comes to him. And so this is a more thoughtful process. The reason that we have an overstaffing process is that it's in the collective bargaining agreement. We want to honor that. It's in there for a reason, in my view. And I want to talk about why I think it's in that agreement. It is a more measured and a less disruptive way than getting rid of programs and departments. And it was put in there to be able to use more of a scalpel than a meat cleaver to make changes in academic staffing. And for many, many ways, it's an attempt to take less drastic action than, for example, our neighbors are taking. If you've not looked, and I know you have, some of you have, but some of you probably haven't, go look what's going on in Kansas, where they basically gave them a week's notice that tenure protections are gone. Why? Budget reaction. We've got to save money. We've got to be able to go out. That is the meat cleaver. That is not good. Look at Missouri Western State. Wholesale program eliminations. They cut a tremendous amount of academic programs. Now their critics say, well, they had too many to begin with. Okay. But the bottom line is they have had a major drastic reduction. And who gets hurt by that? Well, obviously the people who aren't employed, but so do the students. It's lack of academic opportunities. And so today what I want to do is start a discussion. So point 2 that you're going to take away from today, this is the start of a discussion about, one, what does overstaffing mean to us, and how should we consider applying that to our campus? So let's see here. Here's another, just to give you an idea of enrollment trends. We didn't put the high in here on the top for the total enrollment of students because we got up to roughly 7,300 students briefly at one point in time. The FTE faculty are roughly our positions. So this isn't the number of people hired, but it's the budgeted positions that are out there. They're fairly stable, and they've been that way for a number of years. Honestly, in all the past reductions, the first goal has been, don't harm our teaching capacity. We've tried to protect that. As we go forward, we're going to have to work a little harder to be able to do that. There's still lots of uncertainties out there. There's been uneven declines and increases across the campus in enrollment of our various academic programs. To do this, we think it's time to look at overstaffing as a measured, reasoned approach to, can we reallocate, can we right-size many of these areas? So, to me, that is not just an opinion that I come up with. Pursuant to the bargaining agreement, we had a faculty advisory committee. I got to tell you, I see a number of the members here today. I'm so appreciative. They didn't get any extra pay. They got a little more, well, a lot more criticism from some, unfair and unwanted in most cases. But they did that, so they gave us some advice. Now, there was some advice about how to reduce budgets. And I can talk about that when we go to do budget feedback if we want to do that. But they also, I think, very carefully looked into, if we're going to do overstaffing, what do you look at? What are the metrics? And so a number of the budget reduction recommendations that they gave us are things we've done over the past 7-8 years. The BRTs, if you remember those, the reducing of our backroom operations, and many of them even frontline operations. Staff not taking salary increases. We've had, Charlie, how many VSEPs? Three once in a lifetime VSEP opportunities. Those are all things that have worked and we've used in the past. We'll continue to do those going forward. The one that is out there is the overstaffing. And so what I would like to do is take the beginning work of what the Faculty Advisory Committee gave us and begin to apply this. One of the recommendations are, look at the Coordinating Commission. They've got metrics about what viable programs are. Great, those are programs. I am not particularly interested in eliminating programs, but I am interested in reweighting and trying to see, we've got people out there who are teaching large loads, large numbers of students, and we've got people who are teaching lower numbers. Is anybody wrong or bad? No. They're doing their job. They're doing what we ask them to do every day of the week. But as an institution, if we don't look at this now, increasing scrutiny is coming our way to do meat cleavers. I don't want to do that. I want to protect that as best I can. This is a more measured way to do.
Lecturers, we look at the four course load for them because we don't have the same expectations. And then we also would look at course section enrollments. There is not a mathematical solution to this, in my view. There might be very good reasons why a department doesn't have as big as sections. There might be very good reasons as to why the loads are not as high. But we need to talk about that. And so here's what I would propose to you today and why I want to do it. We have started a collection of data, much of the urging, and again, I appreciate the faculty advising me. Get some data out here, let's look at it. I need some feedback. I want some help. I don't want to unilaterally just go off and do this. And so, as we begin to walk through here, I don't think that numbers alone are indicators of quality or quantity of our academic abilities here on campus. I think a lot of this is a discussion that needs to happen among ourselves about, are there areas that need to be that are overstaffed and we need to correct that? It seems pretty foolish to me to just jump to that conclusion and publish a list and say these people are gone. That is not my goal. I don't think that serves anybody's purpose. We've got some really competent deans. They're going to want this information. So deans, hopefully you have it or will have it here soon. But I'd like you to take the next 10 days, 2 weeks, look at the information and talk among yourselves about what do we think overstaffing is. Are there reasons? You'll see the information. So in the back, John Faulkner, who's standing there, he's raising his hand, he's got a handout I'd like all of you to take. These are primarily the first set of data. If there's more data that you think we should do with regards to overstaffing, I'm all ears. If there are other considerations, some departments are going to, it doesn't apply to us. We're not worried. They'll go on, they won't give us any feedback. There'll be other departments that are going, oh man, maybe they're talking about us. They should have that discussion and they should talk to their deans. this is a discussion point that we want to share. We don't want to come down and mandate it. We want to try to make a data-driven decision. And so I dearly appreciate you coming this morning. Again, this is a conversation going forward. Message one, no budget reductions this spring or May. Does that mean they go away? No. Does that mean we need to continue to work hard to recruit students and get them here? Absolutely. If we do, we're going to be rewarded for that. Message two is, as opposed to putting off for another day overstaffing issues, we should address it now with a knife, a feathering knife, as opposed to a meat cleaver to chop them off. And that's what I want to accomplish. So I would hope that in 2 weeks, what is that, April 22nd, if I remember correctly, I'd like to have at least one listening session. And I think this is a good point. Why did I choose morning? Because I got my tail chewed so hard for having these in the afternoon. I promise the next time we do this, I'll do it in the morning. The only time that's worse is I had one, I think at 05, we did in the evening. And nobody came because everybody wanted to be home with their family, having dinner, and not sitting here talking about budget. So I think what I would do tentatively right now to give people a chance for adequate feedback, I'll probably do something in the morning and something in the afternoon. Do 2 types of feedback. And I hope that you take the information, discuss it, talk about it in the department, talk about it with your teams, and give me some written feedback. And the reason I want it written isn't to take names, but it's easier for me to sit down and go through things, written questions or observations or opinions, so I can form the answers or at least begin to put them in categories that are similar to address them in. And so I would really appreciate that. We have a Chancellor at unk.edu. That'll go through. Nobody but me sees that. So when I take the feedback, I'll probably take names off. And I cut and paste the comments, and I'll put them among the cabinet. That's how I protect people's names. If you don't want to put anything in writing, I'm not hard to find. Come talk to me. Outside of that, please pick up the things from John in the back. I think it's great news about budget, but I think it's even better news about what you did for students this year. They had a good year. They're going to have a better year next year, I hope. But with that, I would invite you to give me feedback, put all your questions down on an email, send them to me, and we'll see you back here in 2 weeks. All right? Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.